Yo, it's your friend Dinner Dog. Now, presets make a big difference when we're playing the randomizer and significantly change the rules of the game. So we're going to jump right into it and go through all the presets that exist on Sone.io. And in particular, we're going to focus on the 10 you can see on your screen right now. There are 7 more that we'll cover briefly, and there's even more that you could potentially play through the by generating seeds on the race spot through the Long Library Discord. But we're going to focus today on what's available on Sone.io. This is accurate as of today's or the date you're watching this. And what I'd recommend is if you already know a bunch of things, like there's annotations and stuff in the description, and I believe you hover over the bar on YouTube. So just get what you need and get out, right? That's pretty much how you want to look at this. Anyways, I'm going to take us through start to finish and layer on concepts as we go. So hope you're ready for the ride. Let's do this. Okay, so what is a preset? If you've played other randomizers, you may think of them as like flags, but it's essentially the rules of the game. The and less maybe less so rules of the game, but more how the game will play out. So the big differences are the presets are going to impact where relics are located and where you're going to have to look to find them. The pacing of progression through the game. Item stat randomization is available on some presets. And in some cases, you're starting relics. Like, you actually get to start with stuff. And you could add starting equipment there as well. So every single preset has these settings enabled by default. So enemy drops are randomized. Item locations are also randomized. So like the items you would get, like a weapon or like a potion, those are randomized. Your starting equipment is generally randomized. I'll talk about presets that don't have that, and your prologue rewards are randomized. Again, there are some presets that don't have that as a concept, and we'll talk about those. It also, in some cases, impacts logic. So you might want to skip ahead and watch the 103 video on logic, but otherwise, just know that's the next one in the series, and that might cover off some gaps. Which one you watch first is really up to you. It's really tomato. Okay. So let's start looking at presets and what they mean. We're going to start with the simplest example, which is OG. This is just the original randomizer, right? So what the randomizer did before presets even existed is that it randomized relics within existing locations that relics exist in the vanilla game. And you can see those on the maps to the left-hand side here. Everywhere you can find a green square is where a relic can exist. You're going to notice that there are some required items that are in specific locations. I may start using the term like relic and progression item in the same vein after we get past these OG presets, all right? So the game doesn't, or as we just went, the game doesn't randomize these progression items. And when we play OG, the randomizer from a race perspective, there's a special rule that in order to get the silver ring, you must have the spike breaker. There's ways to get this without it, but if the reason this rule exists is there'd be no reason to go down into the mines if you didn't require a spike breaker. You would just leave every time. So the original rule set required you to go down here and grab this and route it in and such like that. So OG is the most structured preset. The big thing here, other than having these items in set locations, is that many relics that are very useful are always available in the first castle. So you always have Jewel of Open, because you need Jewel of Open to get Spike Breaker and Silver Ring, and you need both of those to be able to get Holy Glasses. You need Bat in Logic in order to get through Spike Breaker, the same as Echo of Bat, and Mist is required to get into Silver Ring. And again, you need those to get to Holy Glasses. You require Holy Glasses to get to the second castle. So you're always going to get those relics relatively early, unlike some other presets that we'll see, right? So if you were to describe these locations here and where you find relics, we would call these the classic locations. And your item stats, so that means how much damage an item does, the name of the item, and the sprite that you see is all vanilla, all right? So there's no changes there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So moving on from OG, we have guarded OG, and we can just describe this as boss fights. So the next iteration of the randomizer started adding relics in places that don't exist in the vanilla game, but are behind key moments of truth, essentially boss fights, right? So it was like, hey, let's add more content to this. So everything that we just talked about in OG is still true in guarded OG. Like it's exactly the same, with the exception that there are 5 other places that you can find relics here. So Grand Falloon, Scylla, the Castlevania 3 trio, Beelzebub, and Doppelganger 40. So you can find relics behind each of those boss fights is really just the only difference here. And in addition, the what we call, or I shouldn't say in addition, but what we do is we call these the guarded checks. So this is or like guarded relic locations. So it's just like we saw before, where in OG we had classic. This is the only preset you would see this. Most presets are going to use this guarded locations, which means relics can be anywhere that they would be in the base game, plus these other locations. We'll notice that the progression items are still in the same locations they were in OG, and we still have these lovely items down here at the bottom that are always going to be available in the first castle. So as you get to second castle, you always have Bat and Mist available, and you never find them there. Okay, so this one is a very structured preset, just like OG, except that it adds a bit more variability with the boss fights. Okay, so let's look at the most unstructured preset, and this is casual. So the idea behind casual is it takes what guarded OG was doing, and it does 2 more things, at least on the surface. The first thing it does is that it moves those progression items that we saw before, so Silver Ring, Gold Ring, Holy Glasses, and Spike Breaker, and makes them available virtually anywhere. Obviously, the Holy Glasses must be available in the first castle, because then you never be able to get the second castle. But the outside of that, they can be anywhere. So you could go all the way to Galamoth here and find Spike Breaker, where you would never have that opportunity in the in either OG or guarded OG. So that's the first thing there. The second thing is that we used to be able to find Bat, Mist, Echo, and Jewel of Open exclusively in the first castle, and that's no longer the case. They can be anywhere now. The only thing you need to get in order to break into the second castle is Holy Glasses and some form of flight. So that could be Gravity Boots, Leap Stone, Bat, or Mist and Power of Mist. If you've got any of those combinations, the game may intend you to go to the second castle. So this is a very unstructured setting, because beforehand when we were looking at guarded OG or OG, you would essentially do everything in the first castle and then go to the second castle. The only thing that would bring you back to the first castle is the Merman statue relic, which you could then use to get to the holy symbol check. If we were to go back here, this check right over here. That's the only reason the game will send you back. We used to call those agony seeds, going back and forth between the castles. But in casual, you may have to go back and forth a couple of times. Well, maybe not necessarily a couple of times, but it depends on how far you go in the second castle. The only thing that's really gated in the second castle is Akmadon here, because you need a transformation to get into that Akmadon fight, and you may not have one going into the second castle, and there may not be a transformation in the second castle. Maybe you get Jewel of Open in the second castle, and you need to go back to the first one, get a transformation, and then go fight Akmadon. So you can go between castles multiple times in an intended order. So because of this, it's very unstructured. The game can end very quickly. Like it could give you all 5 Vlad relics, Holy Glasses, and flight immediately, and then you can just go beat the game. Whereas before in OG and guarded OG, even if it gave you all those things, you still had to get like Silver Ring, Gold Ring, and all that stuff to be able to get Holy Glasses. Like it would take a while to make that all happen, as well as like needing Mist and stuff like that, where like that may not be required at all. You have plenty of seeds that don't require Mist or Bat. And because of this, the routing decisions can be vastly different than what you'd expect in any of the OG seeds we saw there. The other thing that casual does is it does this thing called item stat randomization, which we alluded to before. So what that means is that you could pick up like a short sword, which usually does very little damage, and maybe it does a lot of damage now. So item values are randomized. We'll talk about that more in other videos. Also, the sprite of what the item looks like will also be randomized as well. So it may look like a holy sword, that's a bad example. It may look like a rapier, but it's actually a short sword. The color will be different. of the sprite, and the name will be different. So maybe it says rapier, but it's actually a short sword. You look at the item description in the menu to confirm what item you have. We're not going to talk about that too much more in this video, but just know that items are going to look a lot weirder than they normally would in this preset, and it's something that we've that's now randomized in this iteration of the randomizer. Okay, going forward, we have safe. So safe is kind of like the intended typical experience of the randomizer, especially for like people who are just playing this for fun. I mean, we race this as well, but it's the intended for fun randomizer setting. So it's just like casual. So the progression items like gold ring, silver ring, etc., can be anywhere. The you're not guaranteed bat or mist in the first castle. The and all that goodness, right? But it adds some structure into it. So it uses this system. You're going to hear a lot of this as you go through your racing career. It uses a system called complexity. I have a video on that randomizer 108, that gives you a brief rundown of how that works, and then 301 goes into how you can use it in races. But don't worry about that right now. The all you need to know is that the game essentially will order relics in a way where it has steps of progression, just like in the actual base game. So, and I believe this number of intended steps is the same as the base vanilla game at 9 intended steps, although I could be wrong on that. But it's essentially there to replicate how the base vanilla game works, just with randomizing items. So you might get early flight and then be forced into the second castle, only to come back to the first castle and stuff, just like casual. The only difference is that the number of those steps will be like predetermined. And how that works is that there's at least 9 steps required to then open up the final fight with Dracula. So it's a more structured setting. Unlike casual, which could end very quickly or take a long time, safe is more consistent. It'll take you longer than casual for sure, but you won't have these like surprise seeds. So it gives it more of a vanilla like feel in terms of like progression rather than just gain everything immediately and then beating the game. So with safe, and like if you were to play with settings on the website Sone.io, you could change this complexity number here. Like, and a lot of people do, thinking that, the default mode is easy mode. I want hard mode. And that's not what this is. Complexity or structure is not difficulty. Casual, which has the lowest complexity, could be the most difficult thing you ever do. The safe could be the easiest thing you ever do, or even things with higher levels of complexity, which we'll talk about later. Like, you'll find out more in the other videos. I don't want to confuse you right now, but just know that the default setting is the setting you want. A lot of times people will come into the Long Library Discord and say, hey, I can't get a seed to generate. And the reason being is that they've taken, let's say, a preset like safe or something like adventure, which we'll talk about later, and they've cranked up the complexity to a point where there's only so many ways the game could actually generate that. And based on how the randomizer works, it's going to try like throwing a bunch of things against the wall until something sticks. And for some of them, like the universe is going to end faster than you're going to generate a seed for this thing. So just keep it where it is. The safe used to be complexity 10, but we lowered it to 9 because of how long it would take to even generate those. Just don't do it to yourself. Complexity is not difficulty. You're not being like a pro gamer by upping the complexity. If anything, you're making it very linear, and it won't matter. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about that. So everything else is the same. It's just that there are progression steps with how the relics are put forward. So it'll take longer for seeds to generate. Just because it has to throw those things against the wall. And item stats are still randomized, just like you saw in casual. Okay, so now we're going to look at a bunch of presets that take the idea of safe and then change the formula a bit in fun and interesting ways. And the fun, or not necessarily most fun, but the fastest way it looks to do that and still replicate the safe experience fairly closely is with Lycanthrope. So typically when we play the randomizer, especially with presets like OG and Guarded OG, where you're practically guaranteed to get bat fairly early, Lycanthrope looks to solve for the idea that we often don't really use the wolf relics that much because bat is generally a faster movement, and even if you do get all the wolf relics, they can kind of be really expensive to use from a magic point perspective. So what Lycanthrope does is it starts you with all 3 wolf relics. You just get them immediately when you get control of Alucard. He has them at the moment you see Alucard on the screen. It doesn't play like a sound effect or anything. You just have them. The When you use Wolf, it uses no MP just to stay in Wolf form. And when you run, like Power of Wolf will eventually activate. And when it does, every time in the vanilla game when you hit someone, it takes a big chunk of MP. But in Lycanthrope, it only takes 1 MP. So it makes it so you can easily use it very often. The price for skill of Wolf is still the same as the base game though. But which is just like the initial Wolf charge, but you don't need that to get to top speed. It's just faster acceleration. The other thing that's going to be different here is that all the presets we talked about before had randomized starting equipment, right? So like I was always going to have a one-handed weapon, I was always going to have a shield, I was always going to have a helmet, etc., right? And those things would always be randomized. So like maybe like one, instead of having Alucard sword, I'm going to have a flat like a falchion, sorry, I couldn't pronounce it, or a broadsword, right? Or I don't know, a girthang, something like that, right? Where in Lycanthrope, your starting equipment is set, and the starting equipment's a banger. We start with the shield rod, the shaman shield, which is okay. I don't understand why that's there yet. The silver crown, which we'll talk about, brilliant mail, blooded cloak, and mystic pendant. So it's kind of an odd mix mash, and the theme behind this is it's starting you with all of the equipment outside of rings that increase your intelligence as much as possible. In particular, the silver crown increases your intelligence by 12. And the reason why it gives you shield rod and shaman shield is because using that shield rod spell temporarily boosts your intelligence by 20. So and the rest of them do this as well. Like blood cloak gives you an intelligence, etc. Right? So the idea behind this preset is that you're just like this like wolf shaman and you're ready to go, right? You can cast spells very effectively. And you can always turn into the wolf, right? So the thing is, you may say, well, Dinner Dog, I usually don't get to keep my starting equipment, right? Because death is going to take them. Well, in Lycanthrope, you're allowed to skip death. So the theme we're going to talk about with skipping death is that if you have a library card early, you can always skip death. You can always use a library card that's not a glitch. Alternatively, if you're playing a preset where the preset gives you immediately a transformation, and you can use that transformation also to skip the cutscene with death, then you can do that. I'm not going to go into the details right now. You can see tutorial 210 on that. It'll walk you through exactly what you need to do to set up like 100% of the time. And you'll be set up for success. So you actually do keep these. The Mystic Pendant is probably the most important because you're just going to be constantly getting MP back. It gives you double MP regeneration. And as you're using the wolf constantly, it's going to just be your best friend. So the minimum complexity in this is 8. So it's a little lower than safe, but relatively it's actually the same as safe because you already start with wolf, right? So like it has to account for the idea that once you get flight, you can already go into fight Aurochs or Akmadon, right? So it's leveling the playing field again. You'll learn more about complexity later. So it's still dependently structured, just like safe is, but it's faster because you have access to wolf and theoretically some more out-of-logic stuff that you may not have right away from safe, right? The relic locations are still guarded. In this preset, though, and you'll see this more often as we go forward, the item stats are now standard. So a lot of presets kind of walked away from the item stat randomization, and you can understand why, especially in this preset when you're starting with set equipment, that equipment needs to be reliably the same. Okay. So let's go on to the next one. So Warlock, again, same like safe, or very like similar idea that like there's relics and progression items can be anywhere as long as they're within logic. And there's a minimum level of steps intended to get to the final relic or the final fight with Dracula. But in this case, instead of starting with Wolf, you start with Mist. Not Power of Mist, but you do start with Mist. So you can go into Mist form at any time. All your stats are turned down to 1, regardless of what you did in the prologue. And your intelligence is set to 99, which sounds great. It's not actually as great. Like you'll find the 107 video will tell you why intelligence as a base stat isn't very good. but you still get a lot more intelligence than you do of everything else. So the because you have low strength, like using a weapon or your fist is going to be very ineffective, especially at the beginning of the game, and you'll have low constitution, so your natural defense will also be very low as well. Spell costs are significantly reduced. Like you can soul steal immediately because no matter what your MP is to start, you'll always be able to use 4 MP. Even if you were to play luck mode, which is not intended for randomizer races, but you'd still be able to use it because I think luck mode starts with 5 MP. Anyways, not the point. The point is that the idea is you're casting spells. That's is the idea of Warlock. The Your starting equipment, though, is not guaranteed, so it will be randomized just like it would be in any other preset. The complexity exists at 6, and that's taking into account that you both have a transformation to start, so you can get into Aurochs and Akmadon, and you can also get through Mist Gates right at the beginning. So I had to lower the amount of steps to be able to get to the end because the maximum amount of steps is also lower because of what you start with. The But it is slightly more open-ended than safe. Again, you'll hear about more why later, especially because there's a lot of tech involved with with Warlock. So don't worry about this right now. But technically, you can fly with just Mist. You don't need Power of Mist to do it. Generally, you don't see that in other presets because Mist is so expensive. But you can essentially spam Mist as much as you want, and you can essentially achieve flight. I've got a tutorial about it in the 30 and 308. The Swarm has an even better tutorial that he's made, and I'll link it in the description. But yeah, like you can fly essentially. It's very high tech though. I wouldn't worry about this right away. Like I wouldn't start your randomizer journey playing Warlock, or at least not racing Warlock, because not only do you have the technical ability to fly, but there's a lot of other cool tech that we'll explore like later and such that is possible. And like once you're on the Swarms page, he both has tutorials on this stuff, and I believe is building more. So it's another great place to look for this. So relic locations are still guarded, and items, stats, and stuff are standard, and we'll see this constantly. And then we have Nimble, right? So if we talked about Wolf and Mist, we absolutely need to talk about Bat. Generally, it's people's favorite preset. And so Nimble takes Safe and says, "I'm just going to give you Bat to start. All right, I'm going to give you the best like transformation right to begin with. And it's not good enough that I've given you Bat. I'm also going to give you these starting relics as well, being Leapstone and Grouty Boots to make movement even more fluid. And then these items. So you're going to start with the best throwable in the game: Mana Prism, Dragon Helm, Alucard Mail, Twilight Cloak, and Duplicator. So the idea here is that you have unlimited MP. This preset was developed before Lycanthrope and Warlock. So like they didn't have like the stat manipulation stuff down yet, at least as far as I understand. But the idea is, okay, instead of making like Wing Smashing free, we'll make it with the Mana Prisms, which does add an interesting dynamic because you have to understand like how often you need to hit Mana Prisms, especially in a racing setting. And where there are optimal areas to do that, so you don't run out of MP. Of course, skipping death is allowed because you could use a Wing Smash through the death cutscene, which is it's just very simple. Just be at the door at death before you go in, do a Wing Smash, and you'll go straight through every time. The minimum complexity is 6, again accounting for the Bat, but this one is even more structured than Safe. Again, we'll talk about why later, but Bat is Nimble is more linear of a preset than Safe, which is just as linear as Lycanthrope, and Warlock is slightly less linear. Again, the relic locations are guarded, and item stats are vanilla because you need to know how hard Buffalo Stars are going to hit, etc. Right, and then there's Bat Master. So there's actually a second iteration of this. You may have heard about this before. But the current iteration of Bat Master is it doesn't start you with Bat, but you can see from the map down here that Bat is guaranteed to be in one of these locations. So these locations are essentially the starting 5 locations in the game, as well as some areas in the caverns. Both standard caverns checks outside of Scylla, outside of Succubus, as well as the Leapstone location. So you're gonna find Bat at one of those places, all right? And you don't start with any Mana Prisms or anything like that, no duplicators, but the Bat has various perks to it. So the first thing is when you go into bat form, your baseline speed is increased, especially your vertical speed. So you usually want to be in bat form as often as possible. Now, it can make the bat a little unruly, so you can actually hold triangle to slow the bat down to its normal baseline speed. You can also open doors and move through them without stopping as bat, whether that is during a wing smash or just like flying through the door. Even doing a dive kick into a bat will open the door for you. So you don't need to like untransform to leave areas like you would in every other preset. The um, the wing smash MP is slightly reduced from 8 to 6, and it lasts forever. So once you do one wing smash, you continually move forward until you untransform or hit a wall, etc. Right? The and the cool thing they added is that the wings will flap as it's doing that, so it's a cooler animation. Technically, although less important, Fire of Bat MP was reduced from 8 to 3. And it scales with your level slightly. It's still not the greatest, but it is a cool thing. Force of Echo, which is even cooler, will hit the entire screen. So you have Echo and Force of Echo. The damage is the same as the base game, but it hits everything, which is great for checking items and like killing minor enemies. And your Bat card Familiar will level up slightly faster. But the big thing about Batmaster is just you're getting Bat early, and your whatchamacallit, you're able to move through doors faster. You don't need to hit the or do the wing smash input as often or like at all. Like once you do the wing smash input once, you just go. The this though, or this preset though, is a bit different from guarded. You can see down here that we're talking about spread locations, and that's changed a couple times over time. But you can see here in the second castle, they've added 2 more checks. So these are the checks that are just above the reverse librarian, and the one in that bookcase that you can spin around. There's an item, there's a relic check there as well. Neither of them are in the reverse bat relic location, so you don't need Mist to check either of these. They're just there in the reverse library. Some other changes to the preset are that Spike Breaker is required for the Spike Breaker check, at least in logic. And the idea there is because Bat moves so fast, even with Echo of Bat, you'd probably still hit the spikes unless like you hold triangle down, and some players don't know that intuitively. So they made sure that the game gave you Spike Breaker before having to go through that. You don't necessarily need it, but it'll always be available to you before you're required to check that location. The Spike Breaker lights are on all the time as well to make it easier, and to give you the stuff you need early, or to give you the fun stuff early. Echo of Bat, Force of Echo, and Fire of Bat are set to be in the earlier checks in the game. And based on how the randomizer works and us forcing those checks in the first castle, they're technically required for the second castle. I mean, they're not physically, but if you're using a tracker and you haven't picked those up, it will show that the second castle checks are out of logic because the game is expecting you to have these things early, and it's just programmed there so that they're available for you early. Outside of these things, there's actually no complexity. So things can be anywhere with the exception that you'll find Bat and its other side relics in the first castle early, and you'll obviously find holy glasses in the first castle as well. But otherwise, things can be anywhere except that Spike Breaker won't be behind Spike Breaker because it's required to get there now. Again, you don't need it to get there. It's just the game is set up in a way that it will offer that to you before it requires you to go through the spike room. All right? Item stats and sprites are vanilla, and this is the only preset that uses the spread locations. All right, let's keep going on. So adventure is interesting. So adventure plays like safe, except any or like not physically any, but like virtually all of the equipment checks that you would do in the game. So like if a check in vanilla gave you a sword or it gave you armor, something that you would equip outside of consumable items like food and potions and some of that could be a relic. So I wasn't going to draw it on the map here, guys. I don't got enough time for that, right? But there's a lot of extra checks throughout the entire castle. So it is set up to be an adventure of everything, and as you would imagine, these seats take longer. But people really seem to enjoy adventure, especially people who are just playing the game for fun. The Because you get to visit everywhere, right? It really adds a lot to the game, and it's a really cool preset. It's not the greatest for racing just because it takes longer, but some people do enjoy racing, especially with the co-op mod. But because of the having relics behind any equipment check, there are additional relics that are considered in logic, right? So, like for instance, the Alucard sword is in the first castle clock room, and you need to use the clock sub relic to open that door. So that means you have to have Cube of Zoe. So Cube of Zoe or Zoe or Zoe, I never know the difference, is is a required item where normally it wouldn't be. Things like the Devil card, right? The or Nose Demon. Those either one is required to get to some checks in the first castle. Things like that, all right? So because of this, so it works exactly like safe, except that the number of progression steps is higher, or the number of maximum progression steps is certainly higher. Again, you'll learn more about complexity and stuff later. But the biggest thing to avoid, and everyone does this in the long library, is they try to generate in a what we call an equipment location seed, like they do in their own custom seed, and they crank the complexity up to 14. You will never get that seed. It's never coming to you. It will never happen. All right. The way the randomizer works, it's never happening. Like you will just sit there for eons and eons and eons, just burning electricity. Right. Please don't do it. Just leave the complexity saying alone. It is not difficulty. I know I'm saying it a lot, but you don't know how many times people will do this, and they end up either not being able to play, which is sad, or they come into the long library and with like technical problems, and we just tell them, hey, like just don't do that. Right? The item stats in this preset are randomized though, so you get that cool aspect. But otherwise, it's everywhere. So if you're gonna play this preset, um, if you haven't already, check out God's Child's tutorial about how to set up the randomizer and the tracker, because you're going to need the tracker if you don't know where everything is. It is absolutely a vital resource for playing adventure. So in the same vein with adventure, we have expedition. So expedition is I believe Eldritch is the author of it, and for Batmaster it was MT Fun. Just to give credit where credit's deserved. But in expedition, it's taking what you just saw in adventure and saying, okay, well, let's give you all the advantages of Nimble as well. So you start with Bat, you start with Leapstone, Gravity Boots, Duplicator, Mana Prism, all that good stuff, and it makes some other quality of life changes. So the thing that frustrates some people in adventure, and in fairness, some people enjoy this, is that you're not guaranteed to get a stopwatch anywhere. So like if you need the stopwatch to get a relic check, you have to find the stopwatch by just breaking a bunch of candles. In this preset, it guarantees that the candles in the clock room will always drop a stopwatch just to avoid that potential annoyance. The other thing it does is it guarantees a library card at the reverse entrance, so kind of like where my mouse is right now. Just to give you a bit of more mobility. Otherwise, it's exactly the same as adventure, with the exception that item stats are standard, so you don't get that randomization, and mainly because again, like it's going to give you buffalo stars and stuff, and you can reliably know what they are at the beginning of the game instead of finding out that they're garbage or something like that. All right, awesome. So those are the main 10 presets that we're going to be going through. So this slide here is just to kind of give you a sense of what you're getting into in a more visual sense, all right? So presets that are on the right side here are generally the faster ones, and presets at the top are ones that are structured. Conversely, presets that go further to the left are generally slower, and presets near the bottom have less structure. And like the slow and fast, I've done that based on my splits on Live Split, and you can see how many runs I've done in each of these. For some presets I haven't had a chance to play a bunch of them. Like there was a lot. They haven't been in tournaments and stuff, so like I haven't focused on them as much, and it's just my own personal preferences. The coolest thing though about the randomizer is that there's something for everyone. So things that I like may be different from things other people like, but the great thing is that everyone gets something that they most or like you'll find something you enjoy, right? Like there's very few people who play the randomizer who like Symphony of the Night and who are like, you know what, all these presets suck. Like you'll find what you like here. So feel free to pause the video. But and I've definitely done more than one adventure run, but my live split only had the one run recorded for some reason. But at any rate, this will give you a good sense of all that stuff. All right, so lastly, let's talk about the final 7 presets. A lot of these are kind of April Fool's presets, but even some of those are bangers. So let's go through it, all right? So the first one we'll talk about is Rat Race. So Rat Race is exactly like Safe, except it's slightly harder. And the reason being is that money is progression. So what happens is that it adds a single Zircon as a boss drop, or like a drop that you would get in one of the relic locations. And the intention is you take that Zircon, you sell it to the librarian, and then the librarian will sell you most likely a Vlad relic, and then that you can use that to beat the game. So because it's the only money you can get is from that single Zircon. Like other gems will not drop from enemies or be in pots, and enemies won't drop money, or neither will candles. And if you find one, it's not intended. You also can't use the shop. So all of your items will either be drops from enemies or item checks that you make over the map. You won't have the plethora of things that you could find in the shop for you. So you don't get that additional resource essentially, which is why I kind of say it's harder safe. But it is a very fun preset. I like it. So yeah, give it a try if you like it. And certainly like occasionally it gets raced. The speed run is something that is currently not being raced, but can be a cool preset. So the idea behind this is it expands what it requires the player to do to beat the game. So it will require some speed run tricks, not glitches. So like things that people who run like glitchless might be able to do. And even then, it's kind of not like reflective of a speed run because like there could be things that speedrun requires you to do that like aren't in any of the speed runs, like getting to keep without any relics is not something that you'd find in the majority of speed runs, but it is in this preset. There's a video that goes through what all of the extra checks or the extra requirements in terms of movement are, and how to do them. So I'll link that in the description. That's made by the randomizer creator Wildmouse. So like definitely check that out. It's going to be really good for you. The now on the other end, glitch is like just doing like craziest stuff like out of bounds and various other tricks. It's essentially like a puzzle more than anything, and it starts you off with equipment that is required to be able to perform the tricks, like the duplicator. I think there's like some tricks with like fire boomerangs and stuff like that. But anyways, we definitely don't race this. They take a long time to generate because of the nature of them. But they can be fun. A lot of people enjoy them. Scavenger is the exact same thing as safe, even with item stat randomization. But the difference is that enemies don't drop anything. So it's kind of a cool preset because you really need to rely on item checks to progress you forward. So it's a cool thing where like you have to decide, especially in a race setting, like is my equipment good enough now, or do I need to burn time to get stuff to gain more time later? So it's a very cool preset. Empty Hand is just a challenge run, so you just look to beat the randomizer with just your fists. There are no items that you could equip to increase your damage. It was an April Fool's preset, but people do enjoy that. Speaking of April Fools, the last three are certainly that. So Gem Farmer was literally April Fool's joke, where the idea behind it is you get the Jewel Sword, and all the progression you need to beat the game is in the shop for a very expensive amount of money. So you got to go farm enemies and stuff to get it. I do have a video on it somewhere, but essentially like we don't really race it except if it's like a meme, but it is occasionally played once or twice a year. And then third castle is just safe with all the tiles mixed up, like all like the background images and stuff are all garbled and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. It's interesting because it does bring some things into the foreground, just because especially on like slopes where like it's gonna put a tile that looks like a square, but and it's not edged off like the slope should be. I don't know, it might give you a headache, it may not, but it can be pretty cool. All right, so that is all of the presets that you can play through the randomizer website, Zone.io. The next video in the series will talk about how to gain access to other presets that members of the community had made that are not available on Zone.io. I won't go into them in too much detail, but I'll show you how to get to them. So as always, check out the comments for anything I've made mistakes on. And if you have insights, please add them. And I'll pin any post that has really good stuff in there. But otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. And yeah, enjoy the randomizer and all its fantastic presets. Cheers.